Oda is an average high schooler, so average in fact that half of his classmates forgot that he was even here in the first place. He spends most of his time just reading isekai novels by himself, and the reason he is always alone isn't because he's being bullied or anything, he just prefers it this way. The idea of someone coming over to talk to him is always so anxiety-inducing that it's easier to just blend in and be invisible. All of a sudden, the room goes dark as a black sphere appears in the middle of the classroom and a summoning circle is formed right above everyone in class. In the next moment, they find themselves in the middle of a large hall. An old bald dude gets their attention and says the king has something important to tell them. The students are understandably upset about the interdimensional kidnapping, so they start demanding to know what the meaning of this is. But the advisor couldn't care less about their concerns, so he tells them all to shut up and pay attention. Once they are all quiet, the king speaks up and introduces himself as Morrigan, the ruler of the kingdom of Redis. He tells them all of the kingdom is under attack by demons, and only the power of a hero from another world is strong enough to defeat the demon lord. After hearing those words, Oda realizes this is the exact same scenario as all those isekai novels he had been reading, and he's actually starting to look forward to this a little. The advisor then states that it is time to identify the hero among them, so he invites everyone to place their hands upon this crystal ball so he can inspect their statuses. The first one up is Daisuke, so he walks up to the ball and is told to say the word status to display his stats. He was hoping that he might be the hero, but it turns out that he's just an animal trainer with an average power of 450. The advisor tells him there's no need to be disappointed since he is still only level 1, but his stats already far exceed those of an average person in this world. A few of the other students get classes like a disenchanter, a knight, and even a healer, and the advisor is pleased with the diverse range of strong skills the summoned students have. He also informs the students that they can open a personal status window by saying status on their own, and when Oda tries it out, he discovered that he's an assassin. That doesn't come as a huge surprise to him considering his personality, but something he does find concerning is the fact that his stats are abnormally high. Earlier, Daisuke had stats around 450, and the advisor said that was already much higher than average people in this world, but Oda's stats are at 1,800. So what's with the massive disparity? It's Tsukasa's turn on the crystal ball next, so he places his hand on it, and to his surprise, he finds out that he is the hero. The other students aren't all that surprised by this outcome since Tsukasa has always been a prodigy in athletics, academics, and leadership, so he was the most likely to become a hero. The advisor begins praising him for having such high stats since most people cap out around 500 points, but his are around 900. However, if 900 is really all a hero gets, then Oda is even more confused by the state of his own stat screen because it makes no sense for his stats to be so damn high. Nanase asks Oda if he'd like to go next since there aren't many people left, but the idea of revealing his stats to everyone here scares him because he has read enough isekai to know that there's something off about the king and his daughter. He can't even be certain that they were telling the truth about the demon lord they mentioned earlier, so revealing his stats to them would put him at a serious disadvantage. However, simply saying he doesn't want to show his stats would draw too much attention, so he looks at his stat screen and realizes that he has a max-level skill called Presence Concealment, and as soon as he activates it, he practically vanishes from the group without anyone noticing. Even Nanase, who was talking to him just a moment ago, completely forgets about Oda's existence as soon as he is out of sight, just like my dad. Once the advisor has taken note of everyone's ability, he tells them that equipment for their training will be provided soon, but for now, they will be taken to the bedrooms that have been prepared for them. Oda breathes a sigh of relief. He passed the verification unnoticed, so now all that's left is for him to use his skills to gather information. But as he's walking through the halls, he notices a camera spying on the students from the ceiling, and now he is absolutely certain that something nefarious is going on here. Since no one knows he's here anymore, he's going to have to fend for himself until he can figure things out, and fortunately, he manages to find an old bedroom that the castle uses to store equipment, so he decides to spend the night here. He looks through the available gear and finds some stuff that would suit an assassin, so he puts it on and heads out so he can start gathering as much info as possible. Thanks to his high stats, he is easily able to leap hundreds of feet into the air, so getting around won't be an issue for him. And with his concealment ability, he effortlessly sneaks into the king's room undetected and overhears him talking to the princess about some kind of plan. Morrigan also reminds her to make sure she doesn't let any of the students go into the castle's archive, because it'd be bad if they were to learn the truth. Oda still doesn't know what exactly their plan is, but he can tell that it's not something good, so he is tempted to just stab the king to death right here and end it once and for all. But doing that would be too reckless, at least not until he has gathered more info. The next morning, Oda sneaks into the dining hall and grabs a piece of bread to eat. He contemplates whether he should undo his concealment and tell his classmates that the king is up to no good, but he doubts they would believe him. Just then, Tsukasa walks in and he has something he wants to say. It's clear that they became stronger by coming to this world, and he feels like it is their duty to use their newfound power to help defeat the demon lord just like the king asked them to. So he would like to ask for everyone's support in achieving that goal, and they all seem to be on board with the idea. Oda realizes that the fact that they all see the king and princess as allies means there's no way they'd believe him if he told them about what he overheard last night, so he decides to gather some more information before doing anything else. Later that day, the students all gather outside for their first combat lessons, and they are introduced to Saren Mithray, the knight commander of Redis's last battalion. He says he will be in charge of training them for the next month, and after that, they will be allowed to go into the dungeon to try out their new skills. Oda has been watching from around the corner for a while now, and he's not happy about how blindly enthusiastic his classmates are about becoming heroes, but there's nothing he can do about it in his current situation, so he decides to go gather more intel. However, as he is leaving, Saren seems to notice him, so he puts his assistant, Jill, in charge of the students and follows Oda out. Oda eventually stops as a fountain and wonders where he should go to gather intel, but all of a sudden, Saren appears behind him and asks if something is wrong. Oda is shocked that someone was able to spot him since he's sure his concealment skill is still active, but Saren tells him he doesn't have to worry too much because his skill is still effective on everyone else, but he is a bit of a special case. Saren possesses enchanted eyes that allow him to see minor temperature changes, so noticing Oda wasn't difficult. Oda can't risk having his cover blown, so he reaches for his dagger intending to take Saren out, but Saren tells him there's no need for that because he isn't going to tell the king or princess about him. Oda is surprised to hear that since he figured the knight commander would be loyal to the king, but Saren's loyalty is a bit complicated, so as things stand, he's got no reason to snitch on Oda. He and Oda sit down by the entrance, and Oda tells Saren that he has been trying to find a way to get into the archives because he knows nothing about magic or how this world works. For example, his concealment skill was maxed out from the start, but he has no idea how to level up any of his other skills. Saren offers to teach him how to level up since he wouldn't find that info in the archives even if he tried. Oda is getting a little excited because he has been hoping that he'd get a chance to do some real assassin training, but he doesn't like accepting help for free, so he asks Saren if there's anything he can do for him in return. Saren says he'd just like to hear a bit about what Oda's homeworld is like since he thinks it'll be interesting to learn about, so the two officially start working together. Over the next few weeks, Oda learns about this world's history and how there are separate continents with elves and beast folk out there. After that, Saren moves on to training Oda while Jill handles the training of the other heroes. Things have been going well for a while now, but one night Oda comes to meet with Saren because he found a strange book in the castle's archives. Saren already knows what this is about since he was the one who hid that book in there for Oda to find, and it contains details regarding a coup Saren is planning. He says the king is no longer fit to rule this land because he's willing to pay a horrific price for his own personal gain, and that doesn't sit well with Saren or the other knights, but they'd like to keep things as peaceful as possible to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Oda thinks things would have been a lot easier if he had just killed the king when he had the chance, but Saren tells him he made the right choice by sparing him in the moment. Killing a man is not an easy burden to bear, especially not for a teenager like him. Just because he is an assassin doesn't mean he is obligated to kill, and if he truly intends to return home someday, he should keep his killing to an absolute minimum. Oda appreciates Saren's advice, but he asks him why he has been looking out for him so much even though he stands to gain nothing. Saren says he has high hopes for Oda, and he's not just talking about his stats. When he was first summoned, Oda was the only one who actually thought things through and didn't just go with the flow. Plus, there aren't many who could endure what Oda has been through and come out stronger. Oda gets a little embarrassed since he has lived his entire life being ignored by everyone around him, and this is the first time someone has ever actually praised him so much. Saren is glad it made him happy, but he does have a favor to ask of him since he could really use some help with the planned coup, and Oda says he will consider it. By the end of the month, the training of the heroes is finally over, so it is time for them all to head down into the dungeon. But while they are being paraded through the streets, Oda notices someone who has been glaring at them from the sidelines, and he wonders why she holds such animosity towards the heroes, so he sneaks up behind her to ask. The girl is startled by Oda's sudden appearance, but he assures her that he means no harm. He just wants to know why she seems so hostile towards the heroes when all the other people seem to support them. The girl asks him if he really doesn't know what the kingdom has to sacrifice to summon them here. But this is Oda's first time hearing of any sacrifice, so he's not sure what she's talking about. She could have easily told him what it was, but instead she tells Oda he should find out the answer for himself since this won't be the last time they see each other. As the party heads into the dungeon, they are forced to battle their way through a large group of orcs, but no matter how many they kill, even more always end up appearing. Tsukasa suggests they should all retreat for now, and Saren agrees since they've made enough progress for today, so he uses his divine sword skill to clear a path to the exit and tells everyone to run as fast as they can. However, after walking through the door, they find themselves cornered by even more monsters, so their chances of escaping are looking slim. Just then, Tsukasa remembers that before they came out on this mission, the princess had given him a special smoke bomb which she said would scare monsters away, so he decides to give a shot and tosses it at the orcs. But to his horror, the smoke bomb actually turns the orc into a minotaur that's much stronger than anything they've faced so far. By the time Oda and Jill arrive, the party is already on the verge of defeat, so Oda springs into action and tries stabbing it in the back of the neck, but its hide is way too tough for him to pierce, so his sword shatters on impact. Oda is forced to fall back and finds Tsukasa kneeling on the floor with a broken arm. He's in the middle of a serious mental breakdown because he can't handle the fact that he's not strong enough to defeat the Minotaur on his own. Oda knows Tsukasa has a strong sense of responsibility, but he has never been one to crumble under pressure like this, so he gets the feeling that somebody did something to him. He asks the party's disenchanter to try casting Dispel Curse on him to see what happens, and sure enough, the remnants of a curse are seen floating off his head, so someone definitely planned this whole attack and Oda has a good idea of who's behind it. While Tsukasa's curse is being dispelled, Oda tells Saren that he plans to give his new skill a try, so Saren launches a flash of lightning at the Minotaur, and as it is being electrocuted, Oda activates his shadow magic. Dark tendrils begin to emerge from the shadows before piercing the Minotaur where it stands. Once it has been restrained, Oda begins pulling it into the shadows until its entire body is devoured, leaving only its head behind. However, while he may have successfully killed the Minotaur, he still doesn't have full control over his shadow powers, so he begins struggling to keep them from going out of control. Fortunately, Saren comes to his aid to help him remain calm until he is eventually able to withdraw the tendrils. After the battle is over, everyone returns to the castle, and Saren congratulates Oda on a successful mission. It's thanks to him that everyone managed to make it home safely, but while his shadow skill may be incredibly powerful, it also takes a massive toll on him, so Saren tells Oda to avoid using it unless absolutely necessary. He tells Oda that he has a gift for him, so he hands him a katana. He says the blade was forged by the first hero who was summoned centuries ago, and Oda is grateful for it, but he wonders why Saren is giving it to him instead of the current hero of Tsukasa. Saren explains that Tsukasa was already given a holy sword to use in battle, plus the king would definitely notice that something was wrong if he saw Tsukasa wielding the katana since Saren kind of stole it from the royal armory. Oda understands, so he accepts the katana, and he thinks it's cool that he gets to use the same sword as the former hero. But speaking of heroes, he recalls that the situation with Tsukasa hasn't gotten any better. They were able to figure out that he was cursed, but while some of the symptoms were alleviated by the disenchantment spell, the curse itself still persisted, and Oda plans to find out why. Later that night, Oda sneaks into the princess's room and finds her in the middle of strengthening the curse on Tsukasa with a magic crystal and turning him into a puppet. But before she could finish her spells, Oda takes action and slices the crystal in half. This should take care of the curse for now, but he still has a few questions he'd like to ask her, so he points his sword at her throat and demands to know why she is doing this. The princess coldly says that everything she does is for the sake of the king, so he asks her why she is following his orders, but upon closer inspection, he notices that there's not a single original thought going on behind those eyes. She's obviously being controlled as well, and it wouldn't be right to kill her if she's not doing this of her own free will, so Oda simply leaves. However, he probably should have taken her out anyway because as soon as he is gone, she goes into her closet full of cursed crystals for each of his classmates and begins using those instead. A little while later, Oda takes the crystals to Saren and asks if he knows anything about it. Saren has definitely seen these crystals before, and he mutters to himself that he can't believe the king hasn't given up on this yet. That aside, he asks Oda if he revealed himself to the princess while he destroyed the crystal, and he admits that he did, but only because he wanted to find out what she's thinking and why she's doing all this. Saren tells him that the princess is nothing more than a puppet for the king at this point, but Oda has done enough for today, so Saren says he should go to sleep. But he advises Oda not to rest on castle grounds any longer. The princess is definitely going to try cursing everyone aside from Tsukasa now, but she doesn't know who Oda is, so she has no control over him. She may not know exactly who he is, but now that she is aware that there is an assassin on castle grounds, Saren is sure the guards will spend the night searching every nook and cranny, so Oda won't be able to hide in storage closets anymore. Oda apologizes for revealing himself without thinking of the consequences, but Saren tells him there's no need to apologize. Making mistakes is a natural part of youth, so it's Saren's job as an adult to help him handle the aftermath. Oda says he is grateful that he has someone like Saren looking out for him. And Saren says that if he really wants to express his gratitude, then Oda should bring him along once he finally finds a way to return to Japan. Oda spends the night out in one of the trees, but he is woken up when he hears a huge commotion early in the castle. He wonders what could possibly be going on so early in the morning, so he heads over to take a look. He finds a few guards and his classmates gathered around, and once Tsukasa spots him approaching, he is relieved to see Oda again. Oda is glad to see that the curse on Tsukasa was broken, but Tsukasa looks panicked and asks him where he has been. Oda explains that he was just taking a nap and asks what's going on here. He had expected something mundane, but to his horror, he found Commander Saren lying on the floor with a dagger through his chest. Oda breaks down and asks who could do such a thing. But suddenly, all of his classmates turn on him, accusing him of being the killer. The dagger in Saren's chest is the same one they saw Oda using just a day ago. That would be compelling evidence against him, but they literally saw his dagger shatter against the Minotaur in the dungeon, so this one couldn't be his. Even so, his classmates all say he is way too suspicious because he is always disappearing and appearing whenever he wants. Oda realizes that the princess must have successfully cursed all of his classmates for them to be acting this way, so the only one who is still normal is Tsukasa. He tries sticking up for Oda since it's not fair to accuse him of murder without any evidence, but all of a sudden, the king shows up and announces that Oda is being charged with treason for the murder of Commander Saren, so he orders the guards to execute him immediately. Oda sees a smile flash across the princess's face, and in that moment, he realizes that he is being set up, so no amount of explaining will be enough to get him out of this mess. As the guards are about to stab him, he activates his concealment skill and disappears from view, so the king orders his men to spread out and search everywhere for him. In the meantime, Oda sneaks up next to Jill since he knows he is trustworthy. And once he gets Jill's attention, he is informed that the real culprits behind Saren's death were the king's personal assassins, and now they'll be coming after Oda next, so he is going to have to go on the run. Jill explains that Saren had anticipated something like this happening, so he prepared a bag of supplies ahead of time for Oda to use. Oda thanks Jill for the information, and after gathering the provisions, he leaves the kingdom. That night, the king and princess meet to discuss the plan's progress, and the king is honestly surprised by how easy it was to take out Saren, but it's a good thing the assassins were able to deal with him quickly. The princess has also finished applying curses to all the students aside from Tsukasa, so now they just need some sort of justification to start a war with the nation of the East. The king says the students will be useful pawns for him in the war, and as for the one who managed to get away, he's sure a kid like him wouldn't be able to survive on his own out there, but just to be safe, he tells the princess to send the Night Raven assassins after him. Meanwhile, Oda has just arrived at the dungeon since Saren once told him it's the best place to hide out if you're on the run. Practically no one would bother searching a dungeon just to find you, so it should be safe in there, but water and food are limited, so Oda needs to be careful. Even with Oda's concealment skill, there are still a lot of monsters down there that can detect him with their heightened smell or hearing, but as Oda's assassin class levels up, he will eventually be able to mask his scent, the sound of his footsteps, and even his heat signature until he becomes truly undetectable. There are bosses every 10 levels, and once you enter a boss room, you won't be able to leave unless you kill the boss, so going in alone is a risky gamble, but it's not like he has much of a choice if he wants to progress further. As soon as he steps inside, he is immediately confronted by a chimera, and while he is able to dodge its strikes at first, he gets caught off guard when its snake tail starts spitting venom, so he gets hit in the leg. As a result of the damage, he can't move as fast as he did before, so the chimera is able to pierce his back with its claws. But just as it was about to finish him off, Oda decided to use his trump card and cast shadow magic to completely obliterate the chimera. He successfully defeated the first dungeon boss, but the injuries he suffered, combined with the exhaustion from using the shadow skill, left him in critical condition. The shadow skill recognizes that there's a risk of its master dying, so while Oda is still unconscious, it automatically switches from attack to recovery mode and begins healing his wounds. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Tsukasa has just asked everyone to leave the castle with him. They ask if he's saying he wants to go hunt the Demon King right now, and that sounds like a good excuse, so Tsukasa goes with that, but his classmates all tell him to shut up and sit back down because they aren't going anywhere. He realizes that their behavior must be an effect of the curse that Saren told him about before he was killed, and if it's true that all of his classmates are being mind-controlled, then he's just going to have to leave on his own. However, to his surprise, a few of his classmates actually do agree to leave with him, and a few hours later, they are all standing outside the city limits. They're surprised that they managed to get out so easily, but it makes sense since their excuse was that they wanted to fight the Demon Lord, and it wouldn't make sense for the king to stop them from completing their mission. That aside, Tsukasa wonders why the others chose to join him when everyone else refused to even consider it, so Yuki tells him that she doesn't think anyone here is currently afflicted by the princess's curse. Asakina adds that he thinks his actions might have played a part in breaking them free from the curse, since even though he's not sure why he did it, he He has fuzzy memories of himself sneaking into the princess's room and shattering a bunch of crystals in there. We later find out that Jill was the one responsible for it because he used his manipulation skill to take control of Asagina's body in order to undo the curse. And even if he was only able to break a few of the students free, he is glad he managed to fulfill Saren's last wish. As the group leaves the kingdom, Asagina thinks to himself that he needs to find a way to reconnect with Oda somehow. He wishes he had tried to find him while he was still staying hidden within the castle, and regardless of the fact that he was cursed, he feels terrible about not standing up for his friend. Most people in class never really spoke to Oda much, but one day while walking home from school, Asakina happened to run into Oda while he was working a construction job. This was the first time they had met outside school, so Oda asked him to keep his job a secret since he didn't want his little sister to find out about it. Asakina promised to keep the secret since he knows what it's like to look after a little sister. And it just so happened that both of their sisters were best friends, so they had a good laugh about the coincidence. Meanwhile, down in the dungeon, Oda has just regained consciousness, and for some reason he recalls having a dream about the day he met Asakina. He really hopes Asakina is doing alright, and he is just as worried about his mom and sister back in Japan, but after he is done worrying, he suddenly comes to the realization that he isn't in excruciating pain even though he got his back clawed out by the Chimera. He calls out for his status screen, and from what he can see, his stats went up a lot from defeating the Chimera, but that doesn't explain why his HP is almost full despite all the damage he took in that fight. He also notices that his shadow magic skill is now level 3, and he doesn't understand how it could have gone up so much after he only used it once, but he has no time to think about it. Therefore, he decides to keep moving. Further down in the dungeon, he ends up running into a giant slime, and after cutting it open, he finds a pretty elf girl inside. He thinks this is the perfect opportunity to try out one of the new skills he got from leveling up, World's Eye. He activates the skill, and all at once, every bit of information about the girl's life comes flooding into Oda's mind, but it's way too overwhelming for him to process it all, so he cancels the skill halfway. The girl barely has 2% of her HP left, so Oda carries her up to the 69th floor and sets her down by a pool of water so she can rest. She later wakes up and Oda hands her some water to drink to make her feel better. He tells Amelia she should get some more sleep so she can recover properly, but she says she's too hungry to sleep, so he makes her a bowl of porridge. The girl is grateful for the food and starts eating right away. After she's done eating, she asks Oda how she got here since she remembers being further down in the dungeon, and he explains that this was the closest watering hole, so he carried her up. She's surprised that he went out of his way to look after her even though they've never met before, because that's the nicest thing anyone has ever done for her. A few hours later, Amelia is back to full strength, and she and Oda have made it all the way down to the 80th floor, but Oda wonders why she is following him since he assumed that she would want to return to the surface as soon as possible. Amelia tells him she came down here to clear the dungeon just like him, so she's not leaving until she has accomplished her goal. The two make their way into the floor boss room, and the second they set foot inside, they are attacked by a dragon. They both jump out of the way, and Amelia uses gravity magic to weigh the dragon down while Oda goes for a finishing blow. However, the dragon was somehow able to locate him and swats Oda out of the air. Amelia tells him that the dragon is probably tracking his mana signature, so he should diffuse it into the surroundings, but Oda has no idea how to do that, so he does the next best thing and uses pure mana to launch an attack at the dragon before stabbing it to death through the eyes. The dragon falls to the ground defeated, but Amelia is confused by what Oda just did, so he explains that he didn't know how to diffuse his mana into the surroundings, so he just used the surrounding mana to attack instead. Amelia is shocked to learn that he is capable of such a thing, but before she could ask for more information, the dragon corpse suddenly begins glowing. After a few seconds, the dragon turns into a cat, but they are still wary of it, so Amelia scans its status and finds out that it's a shapeshifter, not a real dragon. That explains why they were able to defeat it so easily, since a real dragon would have mopped the floor with them in a fight. All of a sudden, the cat wakes up and it starts complaining about how humiliating it is that she lost to a human. Oda is surprised to hear the cat talking since he didn't know monsters could speak, but the cat scoffs and tells him she's no ordinary monster. She was personally created by the Demon Lord and bestowed high intelligence, so she is much more sophisticated than a regular monster. She just wanted to have a little fun by role-playing as a dragon, but she took it too far and it cost her the fight. She tells Oda that he is free to kill her if he wants, but first, she has a message from the Demon Lord that she needs to relay to him. The message is basically inviting Oda to visit the Demon Lord's castle, but Oda doesn't understand why the Demon Lord would want to see him, or how he even knows of Oda's existence in the first place. The cat tells him she's just as clueless as he is when it comes to the Demon Lord's plans, but her duty is done, so she lies down on the ground and tells Oda he can start killing her now. Oda tells her he's not going to do that because while the cat may be a demon, he doesn't necessarily think she's evil. Plus, he has a soft spot for cats, so he'd rather avoid brutally murdering one. The cat reminds him that the boss's room doors won't open unless someone dies, and she doubts he want to spend the rest of his life trapped, but Oda insists that he will find another way. Amelia speaks up and mentions that there might be a workaround for this, since if Oda were to make the cat his familiar, then she would no longer count as the floor boss and the doors would open. However, there's a catch. The pact ritual requires extremely precise mana control, and if Oda messes it up, there's a chance that both he and the cat could perish. Oda doesn't even flinch and says he's fine with the risk. But that makes no sense to Amelia, so she asks him why he is so willing to die over a cat he just met. He says it's just something he decided to do, so he's going to see it through to the end, and the cat really doesn't care either way, so she tells Oda he's free to do whatever he wants. Oda asks Amelia to explain how the ritual is meant to be performed, so she tells him that first she needs to give the cat a name. He thinks about it for a bit until he eventually comes up with the name Night. He chose that name because the cat's fur reminds him of the beautiful night sky, and she kind of likes the name, but she acts like she doesn't care. Oda then asks Amelia what the next step of the ritual is, so she tells him he is going to need to pour his mana into the cat to bond their souls together. She thinks Oda should be able to pull it off, but she does warn him that once he starts, there's no going back, so if he fails to do it on the first try, he will die. Oda tells her there's nothing to worry about because he's sure he can handle it, and she trusts him. So he begins pouring mana into Night, and a bubble forms around them as Oda is dried into Night's soul. At first, things seem peaceful here, but he suddenly finds himself falling over a city facing imminent destruction. And the one responsible for all that destruction was none other than Night. This is one of her memories of the countless calamities she has caused over her long lifetime, but before she can cause any more damage, Oda reached out and yelled for her to stop. This gets Night's attention, so she directs a blast towards Oda, sending him crashing onto a roof and leaving him slightly injured. Night tells Oda to draw his blade and kill her here and now, because if he doesn't, he's going to lose his life, and dying here would render him a vegetable in real life. She's trying to force Oda to retaliate by attacking him with everything she has, and in the real world, Amelia sees Oda begin to bleed out his ears as his soul takes damage. Back in the soul world, Oda begins charging straight for Night, but just when she thought he was about to strike her down, he instead let himself be impaled on her claws because he doesn't want to kill her. Night doesn't understand what Oda is trying to pull here, since all he had to do to survive was end her life, but he says that's not good enough for him. He knows Night doesn't really want to kill him, or anyone for that matter, but be that as it may, Night says it doesn't matter because she's a monster. Oda says there's no rule saying she needs to kill humans just because she's a monster, but Night tells him it's a primal instinct. Oda can tell that Night hates living like this, so he tells her that as long as she's with him, he's going to take care of her, so her days of senseless destruction are over. This finally gets through to Night, so she decides to trust Oda and settles down in his arms. Back in the real world, Oda nearly passes out from exhaustion, but Amelia catches him, and with a look of relief, she tells him he was successful. Oda then goes up to Night and places his hand on her head. A pattern appears on the back of his hand to symbolize his bond with Night, and at the same time, the pattern on Night's forehead changes from red to gold. Night tells Oda that he has piqued her interest, and she would like to stay by his side and witness his journey, so she swears her undying fealty to him. All of a sudden, a teleportation circle begins glowing on the ground, and the fact that it has appeared means Meg is no longer considered a boss by the labyrinth, so they are free to leave. Oda thinks it's great that they are free to go, but Meg is still weakened from her injuries earlier, so he tells her she can rest for as long as she needs because other monsters won't be able to get in here. In that case, Amelia suggests they should all sit down and have a nice chat so they can get to know each other while they wait, and Night agrees. Meanwhile, back with Oda's classmates, they have just arrived at the city of Yamato, and since this place was founded by the summoned hero a few generations back, it has a lot of Japanese aesthetics. They pay for Nin and all sit down to discuss their current situation. Tsukasa tells everyone that their funds are running low, so they need to find work soon so they can keep covering their expenses. One of his classmates raises his hand and suggests they could all become adventurers to make money since they ran into a bunch of them on the way here. Tsukasa thinks that's a great idea, but aside from their money troubles, he is also concerned about the fact that they still know almost nothing about this world. They can't exactly trust what they've been told by the king and the princess, so he tells everyone to read as many books as they can to piece together this world's history. They all agree with his plan, but they doubt that reading a bunch of books is going to help much since their main goal is to find a way to get back to Japan, and they doubt they are going to find the answer in a random book. Tsukasa has already thought of that, so he tells them that he thinks the fastest way for them to make it back home is to play the part of heroes and slay the demon king. The king was the one who summoned them here, so naturally he would know how to send them back, And once they've defeated the demon lord, regardless of what evil plans he may have in mind, he would be forced to send them back home. For now, he tells everyone that they need to gather as much money and info as possible. And once they have that, he suggests they should head straight for the demon continent to challenge the demon lord. However, Asahina objects to that plan. He says the best course of action would be to stay out and wait to meet up with Oda, since he's bound to show up in the city sooner or later. Oda is without a doubt the strongest out of all of them here, so Asahina thinks it would be foolish to challenge the demon lord without his strength. Nanase agrees because he never really got a chance to speak to Oda before, but Daisuke strongly opposes the idea because he still thinks there's a chance that Oda was the one who killed Commander Saren. Asahina tells him they've already discussed this before, but the king used magic to manipulate their memories to turn them against Oda. So despite what Daisuke may remember, Oda is completely innocent. Be that as it may, Yuki says Oda is nowhere near here right now, and even if he were, there's no guarantee that he'd want to help them after everything he has been put through. Since Tsukasa is the leader, Shiori asks him whether he thinks they should wait for Oda or press on without him. Tsukasa thinks about it for a minute, and he sees why Asahina would want to wait for Oda, since he is a trustworthy friend, and he is a lot stronger than the rest of them. But he doesn't think Oda would want to team up with them. He's always been someone who likes to do things on his own, and with the power difference between him and the rest of the class, they would only be slowing him down. That's why he suggests they should all train as hard as they can so that they can catch up to Oda's level of strength, and only after that will they be ready to challenge the demon lord. Back in the dungeon, Emilia tells the story of how she was betrayed by her people and hunted down until she was eventually cornered on the edge of a cliff. She asked her sister and her people why they were doing this to her, since up till that point, she had never done anything that would warrant such hatred from them. But her sister had no real answer. She just said they wanted Emilia to die. With no other choice, Emilia used her gravity magic to destroy the ground beneath her feet and send herself plunging into the waters below to escape her attacker, and by the time she woke up, she found herself on the shore of a distant and unfamiliar land. Shortly after that, she was swallowed by a dark slime, and the next thing she remembers after that is waking up next to Oda. Oda and Knight are surprised by how rough Emilia's situation is, but Knight is curious about the dark slime that swallowed Emilia up because slimes usually don't eat people. And even if this one did, she finds it hard to believe that Emilia survived in there so long without being digested. Either way, Emilia says she's grateful that the slime ate her because without it, she would never have gotten the chance to meet Oda. Oda asks her if she intends to return home eventually, but Emilia says she has no home to return to. He asks her if she has at least tried having a conversation with her sister about what happened, but considering the fact that Emilia's sister tried to kill her, I don't think talking things out is an option for her. Oda's stance on this is biased because he also has a little sister, but has never tried to kill him. He cares about her a lot, and at one point he worked overtime for weeks just so he could buy her a new phone since her old one was busted. Yui didn't seem pleased with the gift at the time, but not because she was ungrateful. It was because she didn't like the fact that Oda was putting himself through so much stress just to buy her a gift. Just then, their mom came out and told Yui not to give Oda such a hard time about it, since he only pushes himself because he loves her. Yui still felt bad about Oda working so hard for her sake, but she appreciated the gesture, so she thanked him for always looking out for her. Oda really misses her and his mom, so he wants to return home as soon as possible, but before that, there's something he needs to do. Back in Japan, no one ever seemed to notice Oda, which is probably why his presence concealment is one of his strongest skills. However, Commander Saren paid attention to him, and Oda owes a lot of his growth to him. But then the king murdered him in cold blood just so they could frame Oda, and he refuses to let that transgression go unpunished. They are all arrested now, so Oda asks Knight where the teleportation circle is going to take them. Unfortunately, she says she has no idea, since there are only a few demons in the world who are capable of manipulating teleportation circles, and she isn't one of them. Emilia recalls hearing a rumor that teleportation circles send you to the place you most desire to go, and if there are multiple users, it will pick one person and send everyone to that person's destination. They all go through, and in the next moment, they find themselves in the middle of a large plain with a massive tree in the distance. To Oda, it is a pleasant surprise, but to Emilia, this is a horrifying turn of events because she recognizes that tree, and it means she is back in the Elven Kingdom. All of a sudden, an elf scouting in a tree nearby spots them and immediately fires an arrow at Emilia. Oda notices in time to pull her to safety, and afterwards he apprehends the elf and brings him down for interrogation. The elf says he was sent out here to investigate a strange blue light that suddenly appeared, but to his surprise he found the traitorous princess, and it was murder on sight from there. He then proceeds to insult Emilia with extreme malice, so Oda knocks him out, but that doesn't solve their problems because while the elf was talking, more elves showed up and surrounded them, including Emilia's sister. This was the end of episode 3. Subscribe to not miss the next part.